Hello,
That
chat.
was definitely in my plans. Hello. Yeah, I definitely plan to do a more gray playthrough
Yeah,
after
like
my more heroic playthrough
I don't
with
think
different
I could.
companions.
I don't think I could do like a strictly evil playthrough. I think that would be like a little too tough for me. Um, but yeah, something kind of more in between.
Or just, just be a jerk, right? Like, just, like, not necessarily evil, just like, I saw someone wrote an article that they just wanted to be like, what the hell is the name of the guy from Futurama? Kif's, like, the space guy. Oh, God. Why am I blanking on this? Because I'm tired, that's why. Um, Zap, oh, God. What the hell is his name? Now I'm angry that I can't remember it. Zap Brannigan. That's right. He was just gonna. Oh, maybe this was Starfield, where they were just gonna be the Zap Brannigan of the universe and just like take all of the wrong dialogue choices. Like not necessarily the evil one, just like the one that's just like rude.
That's gonna piss them off. Just get negative approval with
Yeah,
everyone.
just make everybody angry at them. Like, yeah.
I'm doing some of the sass as a bard, but not the make everyone angry at me. I've got a high persuasion. Okay, that's really
Yeah,
funny
here it
though.
is. I'm gonna play Starfield as Zap Brannigan. I'll throw this in chat. This is
Something that
fun for
always
later.
kind of like makes me feel a little weird is because intimidation and deception are also charisma based. And
Hmm.
so it's sort of like, okay, you can be charismatic, like persuasive, charming, but you can also be charismatic in the I'm really good at lying or scaring the crap out of people, right? Like in some things, intimidation is strength based, which also doesn't entirely make sense. But I do feel like intimidation being charisma is kind of weird.
Yeah, there's no one real. I mean, I guess some people have they just have an air of intimidation around them. Like even if
Uh-huh.
they're not like a big person, they're just like some teachers. I don't have that at all, but some teachers just like
Uh-huh.
kids just know not to mess with them. They don't even have to find out.
Uh, yeah, it's like the when you save somebody in an RPG, you always get dialogue choices like "Happy to help, can't you pay me, or I'm gonna murder you and drink what comes out." The first and last are pretty stark good and evil. The second is the way an asshole would respond after doing the right thing. Imagine someone saving you from a space monster or whatever, and then they ask you for money. It's not a shakedown, but there will be a persuasion roll, a roll I hope to fail. uh,
Yeah.
uh, okay. I've got Audacity open. That's a good start.
We say
I
4:15.
do as well.
Or is it 4:15 or
I think it is 4:15 according to the show notes.
But
see
the
now
show
now
notes
I don't trust
correct.
myself. Okay, no, it is 4:15.
Okay.
I didn't change the show title though. Hold on. Yeah. I knew I missed something. There was always going to be something. Okay. I've got it right on the card. I just didn't change the show title. So, this is yes. We're talking about both at the same time. Uh okay. All right. So I guess I am ready when you all are ready. And
Okay.
Recording.
I am recording.
Recording.
Okay. All right. So, all right. So I guess we can clap and 3, 2, 1, clap. 3, 2, 1, clap. Starting the show in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to episode 415 of Coin Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, September 28th, 2023 in the evening. Coming to you from Numbergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
From Teldrassil, California, we have Megasa.
Oh.
And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. Thank you, as always, for leaving us reviews. If you'd like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please remember you can always leave us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice. Always helps people to find the show. So we've got a pretty big patch, but an interesting twist for my life and ladder here. Obviously, I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3, just got to Act 2. But I've been playing Tony Druid. And I blame you, Wicked, because you're the one who sent me the list.
I listen. I just provide information. What you choose to do with it is your road to walk. I have no responsibility for the choices that you choose to make, whether they be lawful good or chaotic evil.
I mean, to be fair to you, I think that your text along with the link to the tweet was, "Oh no."
I mean, that "oh no" came from a stance of, I am not happy about Miracle Druid, and if this thing, picks up, that's kind of worse. But yeah, it's really good. So, to loop you all in, basically, Miracle Druid rose and fell now that Auctioneer is banned from Standard. We'll get to that. But that deck is reliant somewhat, not always, but somewhat, on getting Wind Fury off the weapon from Argus. Is that his name? Ignis. This deck is not relying on that. It's the old Anubricon Jailer Tony situation. Now you do have to relearn the whole, okay, when do I Tony my own deck and then swap versus when do I swap and then Tony their deck. You do have to relearn that and be like, oh yeah, if they have a way of removing Tony, I probably want to swap and blow up their deck. And there's some trickiness to the whole situation that I don't always get right. I was playing earlier again and forgot that, like, oh yeah, Warlock can actually deal with my stuff. I should blow up their deck. But yeah, you also have to have enough armor to play all the things. But it's that whole deal. It runs ANR as well. That can be a clever sort of bait out, is like if you know that they only have one way of dealing with an immune board, you can like just Jailer and then ANR to like make a big board, and then if they use their one way of clearing everything, then you go, okay, now I play Tony. So it's definitely got its intricacies, but it's not reliant on like high rolling Wind Fury the way that the attack based decks are. People have been running Glacial Shard in some things to freeze folks trying to get there with the Ignis weapons. But it feels just like more consistent and less APM intensive. Maybe not more consistent compared to people that were really good at the Miracle Druid, but the fact that like I can play this deck because I don't necessarily have to do a million actions in one turn is spooky.
Yeah. I mean,
and there is no auctioneer. There was never any auctioneer in this list.
No.
You don't need an auctioneer because you just get everything and you blow up your deck and you just draw everything with all of the other draw cards that Druid has that doesn't need a neutral 6-drop to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just like Nourish, Spread the Word, and the Blossom thing. If you get that upgraded so it's draw 2, gain 10, like that is your ideal solar target to double. So it's draw 4, gain 20. And so that's one of the ways that you set up enough armor for the big Anupricon turn. Another way is doing solar on chitinous plating. And yeah, it's a dumb deck. But and I'm sure like once I started facing higher ranked players again, because I've been in the 4Ks because I was trying out all kinds of stuff. I'm sure it would become harder to pull wins, but I think a lot of people aren't playing things that deal with their deck being swapped and then Jailer. And I beat a couple of hunters that had very aggressive starts, but if you yogg them and reset, usually those aggressive decks can't deal with a board swing like that. So
yeah, I did face one. They didn't play Tony, but it must have been the same basic list because it was all the other cards. I just didn't. They didn't need to actually swap the deck. I was Arcane Hunter. They refused to proc any of my secrets until turn 7 or 8.
Why should they? I got all the time in the world.
I got them to 4.
Uh-huh.
And then they ANR for full health. Yep. So, and then I was like, well, and then they got all this armor, and I left before they could even Tony me. So it's possible I could have done just a little bit more damage, just a little bit faster, but it definitely seems like it is possible to win against even something pretty aggressive.
Yeah, although I will say if you do want to beat druids like this, play Enraged Warrior, which is probably actually the best deck that no one wants to play. It's so good.
Well,
I think Enraged Warrior is a little hard to get started with sometimes. So it took me bouncing off that deck a few times before I really got the hang of it. Also, if you played older versions with Rifts, the deck feels different and a lot better now. So give it another shot. If you haven't played Enraged Warrior, or you used to play Enraged Warrior, it is a good deck and it is worth a shot and worth taking a little time to learn.
Yeah, Rifts were always, for me, felt weird in Enraged Warrior. Like the fact that you had all these spells in your minion-based aggro deck was pretty strange. But yeah, it's very solid.
Even Kibler's playing Enraged Warrior. He just posted one today.
Ooh,
he said this hitting
top 500.
Yeah, he said this hitting people in the face thing might just work out. So, and he's running a riffless version. So yeah, it's Steam Guardian and the Battle Worm Faceless, and I'm just seeing what other things he's running at double Acolyte of Pain also. So he's seen the light of the Phoenix, I suppose, and
the Faceless is just so flexible, and I feel like this version of the deck, the older versions of the deck could have a little bit of a problem where you had 3 different packages in your deck, and that could make it flexible, but also you could draw only one card of each, or not the one you need for this matchup. Whereas this is a deck a little bit more focused. It still has a flexible game plan, but it doesn't have as many clunky draws. So, and you can go face and hit people, but you can also do it in kind of a big combo-y, flashy way.
I guess I should add Kibler went 17-3 with the list that he posted.
Oh my
gosh.
Okay.
Just shows he can hit face when he wants to.
Yeah, it's every so often, it's a treat, it's not something you have to do all the time.
Well, I suppose I already started to talk. I did play a little Enraged Warrior. I played Arcane Hunter. I finally hit Legend. I was not at Legend this whole time. I just because I hadn't been having as much opportunity to play. And so I finally got in around 3,000, and immediately had that Miracle Druid, but with Tony and ANR game. And then right after that, a Mech Pally. Turns out Bubblebot is not really what Arcane Hunter wants to see.
Mm.
Might have been the reasoning behind this deck choice. A Miracle Rogue who got Tome Tampering off of their Tendril that came from Yogg. So, and they had a full hand, including 3 Astalors that all went back into their deck. So they left. And then right after that, I faced Leaf from the Discord on Face Hunter, and she just way out-pressured me. Maybe if I had found a star power, but I did not, and I'm not even sure that would have been enough. But I also had a very exciting moment where I had someone coin concede to me. So I feel like I have really made it now as a host. So coin concede back to you, Jagu. They were actually not on the coin, but it was the anomaly that gives you a coin if you don't spend mana. So they didn't do anything on turn 1, and then coin conceded to me on 2. So it's extra credit for that, going above and beyond to coin concede.
They found the line.
They did. They found the line. So that was very exciting, and definitely made my day, especially since I had just had a really frustrating game against a control warrior where I kept getting them like almost dead. But as Hat has said in the past, you can't, when you're facing control, you can't think the game's almost over because they're low health. That's not how control games work. It's just a recipe for salt mine posts. So,
as my father used to say, almost doesn't count except in horseshoes and hand grenades. So.
Oh, it's such a good one. I got that one not from my family, but one of my brother's friends.
Yeah. See that you got to, now that you're a parent, you need to you need to use corny lines like that. You got to collect your menagerie of corny lines.
Absolutely. Well, there's quite a menagerie of balance changes this time around.
Real quick, we haven't heard from Wicked on his life on ladder.
Well, I don't have too much to talk about because I decided to take a break over the past week because the combination of anomalies and play a million cards in a turn decks in the meta was just combining to just make it so that I wasn't really feeling it. And also I've still been in like 11x ranks this whole time. I think I'm at I've been hanging out around like 1100 or so. So I didn't really want to be donating MMR on a meta that I wasn't loving. So I just kind of took a break for a few days. I ended up jamming a bunch of TFT, got myself up to Diamond, which is, my high mark. So I'm at Diamond 3 now, which is higher than I usually get. So there's a possibility I can maybe get to Master. We'll see. But I'm probably not going to be playing as much after the changes. I also finished Trails from Zero, and that was a delightful game start to finish. And then I started Trails of Cold Steel 1, which is, I'm very glad I played the first 2 games that I played because this game is incredibly slow to start. And I was actually falling asleep on the train playing it a little bit, and I know it's going to get better, but it's I need to slog through this. They introduced 9 characters from the start. It's kind of like a Fire Emblem Three Houses type of thing, where they have 1 million characters and it's all in a school, and they all have these petty arguments to start off with just to create some kind of conflict. And I'm having trouble getting through it, but I know it's going to get better, so I'm hanging in there. But if I hadn't played the other games, I wouldn't have that kind of faith. But I did after the balance changes today when I got home from work. I had time for a couple of games, and I tried an Unholy Plague Death Knight that Feelink had played that I found on Donkey's site. I figured out, and again, we'll talk through the balance changes, but I figured I'd try the triple Unholy Plague Death Knight now that you can. It's running Magatha, it's running Grave Strength, it's running Marrogar, and it's got a lot of the other stuff. It takes out the Plague Strikes for the down with the ships just to keep the spell count down. So, but it's still got, Hawkstrider, it's still got the spiders, it's still got Arm Stealers. It's an aggressive style deck, and I'm used to playing Unholy DK, so I figured, maybe it's something I can roll with. So first game I queued into was a Renathal Control Warrior. That did not go well, because it turns out when they have 40 cards in the deck, they just don't draw the plagues. and then they killed me with Odin, which they always find Odin on 8. I don't know how they do it even in a Renathal deck, but they do it. The second game I played with it was against a Control Warlock, and I won that game, but they didn't draw any of the plagues, and I just killed it with Grave Strength, so, you know, I guess that works. The third game was against what I guess was a Tony Druid, but I never saw the Tony, so I never really got the confirmation. But they had a turn that they started at 44 life, in which I played a couple of plagues and then played a Frozen Over that I got from a Nerubian Vizier, which is the 2-mana spell that says both players draw 2 cards. Your opponent can not play them next turn. They couldn't play that doesn't count if they draw a plague, but I really didn't care because they started the turn at 44 and they started their next turn at 3 and they conceded.
Wait, what? How?
Well, they drew a gazillion plagues off of between the 2 cards from Frozen Over and their natural draw. And I also hit them in the face with some of my buffed up minions for like 10. So
Okay.
they took a lot of damage, and then they clearly did not have whatever they were going to do. I guess you probably need 10 mana in order to be able to do the Tony things. You need to play the Jailer, right? I mean, I guess you have Innervate, but...
Yeah, well, and the other thing is you often like want to do an Anubricon thing, and so if your armor is getting eaten away
yeah.
without any way of
Yeah. That it was all gone.
staying afloat.
It was all
Yeah,
they had something like 23 armor was part of that health total, and that was gone. So I enjoyed that game. That game was fun. I don't know if I'm gonna do that every game, but if every game was like that one, I'd be all on Team Undead. But I'm probably just gonna play Twist for the rest of the month and just like camp in Standard. I'm interested in seeing what Twist feels like with all the changes, and Standard. I'm like I'm not enjoying. I don't know what the meta is going to be like, and I'm just like on the edge enough that I probably just don't want to mess around and just like keep my 11x for next month, because I'm pretty solidly in 11x territory right now. So I'll probably just kind of camp there and just play Twist for the rest of the month.
Fair enough.
But yeah, there is a lot of news, and not all of it's patch related, but a lot of it is. So we ought to get into that. Okay, so we're going to talk about the patch notes in Dexplanations, because that's pretty much most of the episode, and we want to give it that time. We don't want to jam it all into news. And also, by the way, if I try to talk that much, I'd probably die. So we're going to talk about all the other news that was happening in Hearthstone this week, and then we'll cover the patch notes and Dexplanations. So don't worry, you're not missing it. We're just, saving the best for last. So we got an announcement today, and this is not going to help you if you are listening on the podcast when it comes out, but if you're listening to the raw feed or you're watching us live on the stream, there was an announcement today that there will be an additional sale of BlizzCon tickets on Friday, September 29th at noon Pacific. They just announced this just like last minute. They just announced this today. So if you don't already have BlizzCon tickets and you want to, you have one last chance to get that. You also probably can buy them from other people. I know that there are exchanges and things like that, but this is one way to buy them directly from the convention company. They also dropped a graphic of some of the things that are going to be at BlizzCon. So they have, among other things, they have a Rumble Mania Expedition matches, which is the Arclight Rumble or Warcraft Rumble or whatever they're calling it this week. The new mobile game that they have, Overwatch World Cup. There is going to be a Dueladev station at BlizzCon again, and there will be a demo of the new Hearthstone demo. And they don't have any more information. Presumably, it's some sort of content related to the new expansion, or maybe it's a new Battlegrounds type mode. The last time that we had a BlizzCon, they announced Battlegrounds, and then we were all running around from the end of the line to the beginning of the line to play Battlegrounds again. So, we'll see what happens there, but it's like a month away, which is kind of terrifying. It's exciting and terrifying all at the same time. So,
yep.
And we'll all be there. So if you are going to be there, let us know, and we'll we'll try to we have to figure out what our plans are going to be for BlizzCon, but we will we'll let you'll know. Don't worry, it won't be a surprise. We also got some news that Chris Metzen, who was one of the original Warcraft storytellers, I guess I don't know exactly what. I know he was like a narrative designer. He was responsible for a lot of the world building around Warcraft. He had left to do his own company a year or two ago, and now he's back with the World of Warcraft team as an executive creative director of the Warcraft universe. So it says right now his main focus is supporting our World of Warcraft leadership and crafting the next generation of adventures. Chris was instrumental in developing the foundations of the Warcraft universe, and we're thrilled to have him rejoin our teams in shaping what's to come. And they're going to share what they've been working on at BlizzCon. I don't know how much this has to do with the fact that the Microsoft acquisition looks like it's going to be going through over the next month finally, because the last regulatory hurdle was passed. So maybe that's changing some of the climate there. You don't have to work for Bobby Kotick. Maybe that changes something. I don't know. But that was the good news at Blizzard this week. The bad news and the sad news at Blizzard this week is that there was a round of layoffs Tuesday, I believe, that affected the Hearthstone team in particular. So there was an organizational change that resulted in around 10 people being laid off. It seems like mostly tools developers and folks that work with the underlying game engine tools and, on the tactical implementations themselves. There was one person who was Hunter, who was there for 18 years, 9 of them being with Hearthstone, and was let go. And it always, our hearts go out to the folks who were let go. It's always sucks, and especially when you have a company like Blizzard, like Activision, which is by all accounts doing incredibly well. When they still have layoffs like this, it always seems kind of out of place, and it would be great if there was a better way to handle these sorts of things. But unfortunately, that's the world we live in. So I'm sure that these people were very talented, and I'm sure they're gonna land on their feet. And I've been seeing a whole bunch of job offers and everything else. So hopefully, not job offers, but like leads, whatever. So best of luck to them. And I know that the rest of the team was, there were some tweets from the rest of the design team that were, understandably upset, and, thinking the best for them too. Cause the layoff isn't always rough just for the people who are let go. It's also rough for the people who are left behind. So, aside from that, we had, the last thing is we had some shop updates. The Investigator Zarella skin, which is the one that we were talking about last week, is now available in the shop, as well as the Murgillidan bundle and the Garrosh the Chain bundle are available for 1,000 gold or $6.99 USD. And Murgillidan, if you don't own this and you play any amount of Demon Hunter and you enjoy this show, you will probably enjoy the Murgillidan portrait. This is the seafood draws close character. So it makes playing Demon Hunter almost tolerable. So
I actually really like the Investigator Zarella one. I don't usually go for like the $10 skins as much, just because I like new hero power animations. That's kind of the biggest thing for me. But it's pretty cool looking. The
portrait is fire. Like it's very, very good. I haven't bought it yet just because I've been on my break, but and I'm waiting for somebody to post a new priest deck that doesn't involve 27 spells and Yogg. But I am very much looking forward to buying that and enjoying it. So
yeah, she's just a smooth operator there. I mean, it's very good.
Yeah. And that's really all the news that's not patch notes related. Just a little bit of news. Also a reminder, well, I guess our the Coin Concede listener series has just started up, so the matches will be getting started, and we'll have some updates on that over the coming weeks. But I think we should just talk about these patch notes, because it's going to take us a minute.
All right, so we have mostly in this patch a lot of balance changes to every mode. We're going to sort of follow the patch notes here, start with standard, and then but we'll also make sure to at least touch upon all of the other modes, especially twist. And I actually got some feedback on duels this time that I can share.
Oh boy.
And so, but to start with, in standard, the devs say that they're addressing both power outliers and play experience outliers. So when they buffed Warrior, they knew that Warrior would be getting more powerful tools in the mini set. They still wanted to make sure Warrior actually hit before the mini set.
Mhm.
And so they did so knowing they might have to pull Warrior back a little bit, which of course they have had to pull Warrior back a little bit, as it is, they say, one of the most standout classes. Hunter also has one of the strongest decks in the format, and they would expect it to get even stronger after the other changes we're making in this patch, especially Warrior. So we're making a small adjustment to bring Hunter's power down a little as well. So specifically, those cards for Warrior, Craftsman Hammer, instead of whenever your hero attacks gain 4 armor, it's whenever your hero attacks gain 3 armor, which of course is also 1 less attack when you have Odin active. As well as Sanitize went from 4 mana to 5 mana. And in Hunter, Starstrung Bow went from 6 attack to 5 attack, which I think Hunter is fine.
I saw Sidisi tweeted today that he was sad because Starstrung Bow used to make the big noise, and now it only makes the medium noise. To which I responded, good.
You know something's wrong when a weapon that you barely pay mana for is making the big noise. Like,
It was always nuts. This is still 10 damage for very little. I think we're okay. So, and in only 2 swings, 10 damage. So, and Warrior definitely, I mean, this has impacts for a lot of decks in the format, because there's so many Warriors that it was kind of like, if you don't have a good matchup, or at least an okay matchup into Warrior, it was pretty hard to be in the format, especially for, more burn-based decks, more aggressive-based decks that could get cleared by Sanitize, which really shored up the weak point of Warrior. So this does, will come down a little bit later. But, and the Craftsman's Hammer, it's still very powerful, but it is not only 3 less armor, but also 3 less attack if they are playing it after Odin.
It's taking a little bit of damage out of the deck, right? And like Sanitize, we saw that and we're like, wow, this card is broken. Right? Like, I mean, we were momentarily distracted by the Faceless, right? Like that was a bit of a distraction, but then we looked at the rest of the Warrior cards like, wow, that's actually like busted. And I don't know how much, like, you're certainly not taking Sanitize out of the deck. Sanitize is still like a bananas card. And generally when you're using it is going to be later anyway, because it's not great on curve. Because you have to have forged it generally in order to have enough damage to do anything. But it's still like being able to do less in the turn where you are sanitizing is still a valid reason to change it.
oh, and like making shield block sanitize a turn later, I think is pretty important. Like, it just at 4 mana, it was just so gross. Whereas like, okay, something has been forged between the bellowing card, that fire one, and this. Both are just incredible board clears, and just knowing that you had to like throw out stuff to make them use it.
And then they have 4 incredible Forge board clears in their deck. No, it's pretty impossible to have any kind of early board against Warrior, but they gain so much armor, you have to have early pressure. It was just really difficult to thread that needle.
But now if you can at least get that pressure in for another turn going into their turn 4, like that lets you do a bit more. It's still going to be really tough. The card's like just so much better than Brawl, but it was important to hit.
Yeah. Plus, you can run Yogg in that deck too, which is, I mean, Yogg is just straight up replace Brawl, right? Like, because Yogg is just a better Brawl. Yeah, I think Warrior will be fine. I mean, I think it might not be meta warping, but I think Warrior will still be a very viable deck.
And honestly, if this is even just a slight play rate hit, that's not a bad thing.
Yep.
Necessarily. I mean, it's approaching like 20% play rate at a lot of rank brackets, and that's a lot. And that also just means even it had a very green matchup spread, but even without that, if you didn't have a good win rate into it, and that's 20% of your games, that's just really rough. So even if it's still not a good matchup for you, but it's only 10% of your games, perhaps that's a different experience. So those somewhat lighter touches. We also had Movement of Pride address. So Movement of Pride is the movement from Symphony of Sins that used to draw your highest cost minion, reduce it by 6, and so that was the play Sargeras for 3 mana on 6 scam. That has been much hated since Sargeras was a thing. So rather than try to put Symphony of Sins back to 6 or affect the card in general, they just made that scam much harder to pull off, so that now it just draws a minion, reduce its cost by 6. So unless you are really dedicated to the bit and only playing Sargeras, and I think there is an argument for go back to some of the earlier, some of the really early builds that we had of Control Warlock that were not as much on the radar, where we were trying to make Loken really work and had just like a really heavy high-end minions and didn't have the Armor Vendors and didn't have the Thornveil. So that's a possibility, or maybe you just keep everything as it is. Maybe just cut the Armor Vendors. And because the deck could certainly work without that scam. It was not the only.
Yeah.
Although it did add a couple percentage points to every archetype that had it, probably. I don't know about a couple percentage points, but it would add some, but I think the deck probably, at least Control Lock, doesn't need it. And, Curse Lock and Chad Lock have their own stuff going on.
I kind of think Symphony of Sins was a don't mulligan for it, but keep it if you've got it card.
Yeah.
And now I think you just don't keep it or don't run it at all. There maybe in Control Warlock you still run it just because it's like extra juice and extra reach, right? A lot of them give you reach, but certainly in Imp Warlock, I don't know, when you can't like guaranteed hit the Sargeras. Like a lot of the reasons to run it were because you could high roll that, draw your highest cost and reduce it. And without being able to do that and potentially getting like really bad hits, because even when you didn't hit Sargeras, you were usually hitting Drathir or Gigafin or something else big. And now if it's just a minion in your deck, I'm not really sure it's worth it.
Yeah, especially for those other archetypes. That's a great point. If we were putting Symphony and Sargeras into every Warlock deck because of that potential, and now you have to really think about, does it make sense in your Warlock deck? And, you always have 2 other options besides Movement of Pride for your first movement, but that was one of the main movements you were aiming for.
It's still a really good Farsight right? Like it's still like let's keep things in perspective. Just because you can't scam a win with it doesn't mean that it's trash, right? Like if you're playing an aggressive deck, maybe you think about it a little bit harder, but like the 6/6 taunt reborn still really good. The +6/+6 hand battlefield and deck is still really good. The 6 damage lifesteal in an aggressive deck is still pretty good. 6 damage to all characters just for burn from hand is still pretty good. Like it still does a bunch of things for you. I think there's a little bit more of a cost benefit, but I don't think we were playing that just to scam Sargeras. Like it was a benefit for sure. I mean, again, in Imp Warlock, maybe we were. Maybe that was the answer. But in like Control Lock, in Thaddeus Warlock, you're still running that card. There's no reason you wouldn't. It's one card that generates a ton of value, and if you're a control deck, it still lets you keep up in fatigue with Renathal decks without having to actually play Renathal, which is a big deal.
Or make you less likely to draw the plagues, which we'll get to.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess it may just have to be a sort of rewiring of how you play it, because I feel like if you saw Movement of Pride, you took it on that first discover.
Yeah.
Unless you desperately needed something else. And
or you
now,
already had Sargeras in your hand.
Right. And now I think it's kind of gone from, potentially the best hit to one of the worst hits.
Yep.
If we are not doing serious, deck building changes. Because now it's like a high roll thing in terms of what you're going to draw off of it.
Yeah. But I mean, if that's the worst of those 7, it's still pretty good. Right? It's probably second worst, because I think draw 6 is in most decks is probably still the worst one, just because it's hard to do. It's hard to actually have enough room in your hand unless you are like an aggressive deck that dumps its hand out. But for most control decks, like the draw 6 is almost unplayable most of the time. But other than that, like even if it's like worse than all the other ones, that's still better than most cards. It's still better than a lot of cards in the deck, right? If it's there. So I think that you probably still play it in those decks where you're playing it. It's just, it's not going to be, you're probably not going to keep Symphony in the mulligan anymore. I think that's pretty clear. And you're probably not going to take Movement of Pride on the first discover almost ever. There's always going to be a better option for you, but I don't think it kills the card. Not even close.
It definitely still feels like a card, not necessarily one you always have to play on 5. I think previously, because you could get that high roll, like if you top decked that on 5, you just drop everything and play it almost always, unless you really needed to do something else. A lot of these, the options are, if you have a board for the pressure or you need that over the top damage, you might not necessarily play it on 5 if you have a different good play. But I certainly, at least to start with, will keep it in the lists, I think, because there's still a lot of really good hits off that. But it no longer so much of it we'll just auto include this.
Yeah.
But those were not decks that were 100%. It's not like Evolved Shaman with the Knolls, where like that high roll
by no means
was the deck.
Yeah. But it did lead to some real feels bad moments, right? Like if somebody played Symphony on 5 and got Pride, like, okay, well, we didn't really need to spend the time playing this game, right? Like, and it's not to say that's always unbeatable, but it made it so much more favored for the Warlock that that effect really shouldn't be there, given how powerful Sargeras is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was definitely something that led to a lot of posts on the Salt Mine. And I could definitely sympathize with as well, especially, when playing with it, you're just like, oh yeah, this is great. And then you play against it, even as another Warlock or especially as something else. They get it and you're just like, why are we playing this? So that was definitely, as much as anything, a negative play experience change, and that was clearly it wasn't Symphony of Sins I thought was the problem, it was that specific interaction. Also for feel experience, they changed Coppertail Snoop as an adjustment to a powerful deck and negative play experience to take away some of Mex Rogue's burst and snowball potential. So it used to, they didn't change what it does, they just lowered its stats from 4 attack, 3 health to 3 attack, 2 health. Still costs 3 mana, still magnetic, but you're not getting nearly as much stats being added on. You still get your coins, all of that, but you're not also getting premium stats added on to a minion with charge when you're doing this.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they hit the health as well, because the really important thing is that it is easier to kill whatever this is being magnetized onto. It also doesn't really feel like a card that you can just play anymore. Like if you had nothing else going on, 3 mana, 4/3, you're like, okay, we'll just run it out. Now it feels pretty bad to do that. And just adding 3/2 to something, if you're putting this onto, say, the drone card, that's a 1/2, so it becomes a 4/4. Well, those are, much easier to clear stats on 3 than 4, 5. And it's those little differences that make the difference very early in the game when mana is limited in terms of how you can remove stuff. So lots of times stuff only does, 3 damage, 4 damage at that point in the game. Lowering the health so that it's a little more in range is a pretty solid change.
Yeah, I'm thinking about as the warlock when I'm usually like trying to use mortal eradication to get rid of it, right? And they've got that with a spark bot and they've got a 1/2, and inevitably the 1/2 is the one that gets cleared, right? So now when they have that, you're going to be able to clear the board, like that sort of a thing, because a lot of the 3 damage is a pretty big break point, and you assume that this is going on to a spark bot most of the time, right? Or listen to my playlist, dude. What frequency oscillator? That's probably where the other one that's going on to. Getting rid of the health is really important just for being able to clear it early and maybe have a chance with it. But and also just taking the attack off means that's 2 less damage for Wind Fury, right? Which also can be a big deal. So I think 4/3 it just felt too big. 4/3 are generally fair stats for a 3-drop, and this is not a fair card. Not even close. So it's okay for it to have, this is too good. The effect's pretty good for the cost stats on the minion.
Yeah, and this is something, that health's so important too, because it makes Mech Rogue a lot more likely to have to make more than 1 minion. Just like most aggressive decks, they have to make more than 1 board. But Mech Rogue sometimes would just, if they get that right curve, they just snowball 1 minion into victory, because you just can't clear it, and then it gets Wind Fury and stealth and whatever else. So this makes that 1 health, which at the beginning of the game is a huge deal, harder for them to, their first minion does 30 damage to you. All right, we still have, we're not even done with standard balance changes. So we also have, Spitelash Siren and Gadgetzan Auctioneer, they say in the dev notes, are also combined power and sentiment issues, but mostly focused on the higher end of ladder. For a long time, Auctioneer has been a card that only popped up in standard when it was up to no good. In this case, the mini set provided a critical mass of effects that allowed for a deck that used Auctioneer to consistently draw through its entire deck in OTK as early as turn 5. That's not the bar we want for standard, regardless of the deck's overall win rate. In this case, it did look like the deck was trending towards being very powerful as it was getting refined, but we needed to make an adjustment no matter what. With this patch, we've both removed Auctioneer from standard and increased its cost by 1, since it was a problem card in Wild as well. They don't say as much on Spitelash Siren, but I do note that when it was teased that they would be hitting Gadgetzan Auctioneer, some top Legend players were like, well, what about Nagamage? And Aleko had a tweet that was something to the effect of, when you say you like cookies, people are like, then you don't like ice cream? They're hitting the Nagamage too. So the changes specifically, Spitelash Siren went from 4 mana to attack 5 health to 5 mana to attack 6 health. So they had they had nerfed
reverted
it and then buffed it and
to
then
the
nerfed it again.
And then you do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around.
Yeah, and like it's just this is exactly what it was when it was nerfed the last time. So, which it might be the first time that's ever happened. I feel like most of the time, if something is nerfed once again, I mean, first off, that doesn't happen too often. But when it does, I feel like they nerf it in a different way, because otherwise, like, why did we do this thing? And now they're just like, yeah, people wanted it back. They had it for a while. Like, now the time has passed.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess the thing that's interesting is that, so when they nerfed it to 5 mana the last time, it was literally unplayable. It was, the card was dead.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have Sif then.
That's true.
Right. So I do wonder if it's still, I imagine it's going to be a lot harder to play. It was already hard to play.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be even harder to play for most mere mortals who aren't pocket trained. But I do wonder if that does make a difference in terms of that deck being viable. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
When it was nerfed the first time, it kind of just made boards. It didn't really have...
Yeah.
I mean, even Sunken City, we didn't even have Frozen Touch yet. So
Right.
the deck was a lot worse in a vacuum.
Yeah, the really strong Nagamage players demonstrate how the deck is actually a Sif mage. But it's like smoke and mirrors. They're like, look, I'm playing all these Nagas and making boards. Worry about my board. And then they go Spitelash, Reverb, do a whole bunch of stuff that's cheap enough so they're net gaining mana every time, so they can play Sif and then refresh mana again and then kill you. And it's taking advantage of the Spitelash effect to just keep playing things until you die. Except they run Discovery of Magic, which is a 1 mana spell. So if that's refreshing, you net gain a mana on that, and it's getting them through to the spell school thing. So Sif actually kills you. They don't necessarily get as high of spell damage on Sif, but it's enough usually. And sometimes like they can play more burn spells in that turn because of the mana refresh. The only thing is they have to discover a lot of the things, because they don't actually just run too many damage effects, right?
That's
But they've got Frozen
part of
Touch
what
on the
makes-
board, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the
But
Frozen
yeah.
Touch is definitely taking advantage of their board, but it is part of what makes it so hard to play, is that you don't have a lot of what you need in general. So you have to discover, and you have to know what to discover when, and you have to manage your hand, and you have to manage your board. And there's a reason why every time I would try to play it, and the spell coiler comes down and says, the Queen's power is beyond your comprehension. I'm like, please don't rub it in, my God.
Yeah. So we'll see if Nagamage sticks around. I'm sure there will be some people that post like, oh, it's still best deck of the game or whatever, and it's just like, yeah, for you. For two
That is
people.
tradition for Naga Mage.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping we see a little that Rainbow Mage is able to come back a bit, with Warrior being toned down a little bit. I don't know that it's enough for Rainbow Mage, but that was one of the things that was really tough for Rainbow Mage to deal with in the meta. And if we see a lot of Plague Decays, which we're about to get to, then Rainbow Mage is better at dealing with that than the Miracle decks, at least. Because it's not drawing its entire deck immediately, necessarily. It is still drawing a lot, but... all right. And, I missed... In addition, for the Miracle Druids, in addition to cutting Gadgetzan Auctioneer, they didn't mention in the dev comment, but they did also nerf Contaminated Lasher, which was the new mini set card that Battlecry, if you've cast 5 or more spells this game, refresh 4 mana crystals. That went from a 2 mana 3/2 to a 3 mana 3/3. So you are only refreshing, you were only going to net gain of 1 mana crystal instead of 2. And that does hit the Tony Druid.
It
At least
does.
a tiny bit.
It matters for the people that could do crazier things in a turn than me. Right? Like, with the ability to refresh a ton of mana, you can do more stuff all at once. Like, the biggest deal is now if you're on 10 mana, you can't play the... Oh, except that doesn't matter because Nubricon makes it cost armor. I guess if you Nubricon and play all the minions that cost you armor, you cannot then play this once you've used that effect anymore. But it's just like... Yeah, okay. And it's an Innervate now instead of a...
Old Innervate.
Like, old Innervate, yeah. And you know, it... Usually you're so caught up in what you're doing that you're not gonna notice, like, oh gosh, here's where that 1 more mana would matter. What kind of is great about it is just that it's a free 3/3. So I almost feel like it matters for me against some of the aggressive decks where you just want to play stuff and having that board swing, get it. Like, now I have a 3/3 instead of a 3/2. Excellent. Like, this is a better minion that doesn't die to explosive trap. But I think it won't like get cut from that deck because it's still a card that you can play for free that is, you know, net positive in the sense that it adds to your board and frees up space in hand to just keep drawing cards and doing stuff. But a lot of games get ended against like aggressive matchups just because you swung the board one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you have a clock on an aggressive deck and you swing the board, that's just not what the aggressive deck wants to see. All right, we're finally done with standard nerfs. I think we'd skip ahead really quickly to the standard buffs, and then we'll go back and do wild and twist all in one go. I don't know if that's messing up your slides.
No,
I'm not
well, I don't
sure
have slides.
we
I'm just
actually
scrolling forever, so don't mind me.
I don't think we actually mentioned what they did to Auctioneer.
So just to make sure that we clarify on Auctioneer. So Auctioneer was removed from the core set. It is no longer standard legal. So remember that something they had said about core was they want it to be dynamic. They can add or remove things in the middle of the year. And they didn't do it for Brand, but they did do it for Auctioneer. However, Auctioneer was also a problem in Wild. So Auctioneer is, unlike some cards we'll mention, Auctioneer is still legal in Wild, but instead of being 6 mana, it is now 7 mana.
So they either rotated it 6 months early or 6 months late, depending on your point of view.
Yes. So, you know, and in Wild, you do have crazy combos, but it makes it one mana harder to do. I don't know enough about Wild to know how annoying this may still remain, or if that's enough. But
7 mana, even for Druid, is still pretty late as far as Wild is concerned, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that happens. There's a lot of stuff that just kills you pretty quickly. So, I mean, the only reason that it's even viable in Druid is because of the ramp, but even in Druid, 7 is a reach in that format to be able to get there.
Yeah. It wouldn't be enough to address it in Standard necessarily, but in Wild, that, you know, as we've seen many times, often when there's a 1 mana adjustment to a card, the reaction is, well, does this make any difference? But often 1 mana really does make a difference. We also got some buffs in Standard. So first, there were a number of changes to Death Knight cards, all of which were just removing a rune. from some cards. So Down with the Ship went from being a Frost and Unholy to just a single Unholy rune. Tomb Trader, same thing, went from Frost and Unholy to a single Unholy. And Frost Queen Syndragosa went from a Blood and Frost to a single Frost rune. So these are now much more flexible cards. Wicked Good had mentioned playing a Unholy Plague Death Knight with Grave Strength. You can do that now much more effectively because Down with the Ship and Tomb Trader don't require that Frost rune. So I'd also been seeing some people talking about experimenting with maybe trying to do 2 Unholy and 1 Blood rune in a Plague.
Yeah,
'cause
there's
then you
been a
can get
few of
some of
those decks. I saw a few of those decks on Donkey's site too. I didn't play any of them, but there's a few of them. It looks like Fino was playing that today with because you just run No Muncher and Patchwork basically, right? Like that's that's more or less. I guess you're running Noxious Cadaver, which is the 1-drop that does 2 damage to an enemy and your hero. That's what else he's running. But I think that's really all of the blood that he's playing. So he's basically just playing like the broken blood minions. And I mean, you can do that too. I mean, it's a matter of which way you want to go. I mean, this is going to be more of like a controlling type deck if you're running Patchwork and No Muncher. And if running the triple Unholy is just giving you the extra win con of being able to just Grave Strength them to death, right? So either way, I think they're both. We'll see which one is better. People will experiment, but I think they're both potentially viable approaches. I guess the difference is that you don't have to run full Rainbow in order to work the blood stuff in. So like you can still run stuff like Distress Cavalier. Like if you were going Rainbow, because Distress Cavalier, which is the death rattle that shuffles plagues in, is double Unholy. If you were going to go Rainbow to bring the blood stuff in, you wouldn't be able to run Distress Cavalier, which is or Staff of the Primus. So that was kind of an unacceptable trade-off to like to play the blood cards but lose half the plague cards. Then what's the point? So this allows you to still keep those cards and then still work in some of the blood stuff.
Yeah, 1 blood is kind of a weird space. Like you get No Muncher and Patchwork, and those are kind of the best ones. There's, I guess, Screaming Banshee, and then also the weapon that gives you a lifesteal minion based on how many times your life total changed on your turn. Like there are some powerful cards, but not ones that necessarily blend with the plague strategy. It's sort of bizarre because I feel like Frost kind of naturally went with plague anyway. Like you want to be killing the opponent. Like the plagues get better, just like bombs. The more damage you deal to the opponent, the more likely it is that they just randomly draw some and die. Cantaloupe had actually been playing a triple Unholy Plague deck, before all this, just because the Druids were on the rise. And, High Legend, where he plays, he was seeing a bunch of them and having a Grave Strength deck that also sometimes just played Helya. And that was really the big thing, having the ones that shuffled themselves back in was a big deal against, Gadgets and Auctioneer opponents, because since Auctioneer, it like stops in between every draw, there's opportunity to draw a plague on every one of those draws rather than, an actual draw this many cards at once where they wouldn't shuffle in until the end. So I don't know how I feel about these buffs where they've basically taken all these, 1 of 2 different runes and just made them Unholy, or in the case of Syndragosa, just Frost, because it feels like it leans towards just playing triple runes, right? Like,
yeah.
And that was kind of the interesting thing for me, is seeing how Death Knight will, over time, as it gets more and more, tools, have this sort of spread of things to do besides triple rune. But that just has not manifested, and now there's even less incentive, I feel like, to do so.
I do
always-
wonder. Go ahead.
It always did feel to me like on paper it felt like Plague should go with Frost. Either somehow we bring back the burn Frost that we sort of only really had at the very beginning of Death Knight, or there's been kind of movements toward a Death Rattle Frost and or Unholy thing, but just none of those. I don't know whether there might have been something there that wasn't found, but there always seemed to be a lot of awkward trade-offs of runes and which cards you could run. But I do agree that on the one hand it makes things more flexible, but on the other hand it probably is most likely to make things more flexible in a way that just goes back to triple rune. It also certainly has had the short-term effect of making plagues quite popular on ladder. At least for now. So I'm glad, because it's a popular archetype, I'm glad people are having fun with that. We also had a bit of an explosion of Salt Mine comments about why do I have to play against plagues? That may be temporary, we'll see. It's also a symptom of things like the Tony Druid, because it's just a very clear counter. So in a way, maybe it's a safety valve for the Tony Druids.
I mean, that's why I was playing it, because I knew that I saw the Casey tweeting that he played 7 Druids in a row after the patch. So I said, okay, then let's go. Bring your stupidity on, and I will meet it with equal stupidity. But I do wonder if they're just gonna if they're even gonna print more triple rune cards after rotation, right? Because I think what we've seen, because they've tried a few of these, these are pretty much all of the cards that had multiple runes on them, and none of them saw play, and this seems like a retreat from that strategy, right? To entice people to play not triple rune by printing cards that required different rune types. So the other way that they could move away from that is just to, at rotation, don't print more triple rune cards, right? I don't know, but it feels like they haven't printed any more triple rune cards since March of the Lich King. And they've been doing things to try to get people to play anything but vertical runes, and nothing seems to have worked. Like, Plagues were clearly an attempt to get people to play like Unholy Frost, and nobody was interested in it. And so this is a capitulation on that. I don't know, maybe it's just like a flaw with the way that the runes are set up, or maybe like the triple rune cards are so powerful that that's just the best way to do it, and that trying to get people to do it the other way would just result in power creep. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. We're going to be nearing our first maximum number of cards for DK, right? Because the Path of Arthas, right? Yeah, keeps them with the same number of cards as the other classes. So we'll see if 6-set meta gives just enough of a density for some of these other strategies for DK to shine and people to build with. But yeah, I guess it's just sort of like, wow, I am in some respects kind of happy by the additional flexibility to put Down with the Ship in the Unholy DK, or put Syndragosa in Triple Frost, because otherwise they just weren't seeing play. I kind of would rather sort of stay the course and navigate away from triple runes and design more cards that force people to look in other directions than strictly triples.
Yeah.
And there are sort of clear, or at least we're leaning towards sort of clear sort of rune archetypes, right? That Double Blood 1 Unholy is the hand buff archetype for Death Knight, right? Because you get the Nerubian that copies itself, and that's a really good receiver for hand buffs. But the hand buff cards are like the Double Blood, give everything in your hand +1/+1, or +2/+2 if you spend the corpses. And there are a couple other single blood cards that are hand buff. And Plagues was the double unholy frost, right? That seemed like what they wanted it to be. But then I think with how it just sort of fell off and wasn't played except by people who just like really wanted to play Plagues and were willing to sort of take the win rate hit to play them. I think they're doing this so that at least the Plague cards will see more play by being in Triple Unholy. But it's just, for me, it's just another build of a Grave Strength deck, and I would rather see over time that, like, you know, maybe when rotation happens, they rethink the triple rune cards, and we'll see a lot more diversity. Because Rainbow, you know, they've been kind of pushing stuff for it, and it just hasn't just hasn't hit.
Or you need to have triple rune cards in those combinations that would force you into playing like double unholy one blood, but they don't seem to want to do that, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, right? But I think about Magic and like what it takes to get people to play more than 2 colors, right? And it's usually some broken legendary that's in all those colors, or a broken legendary minion rather, or like some mythic card that like Atraxa in the World Championship this weekend or whatever, right? Like you need to print a reason to get people to go a way that's going to be ultimately less powerful. You need to make up for that power somewhere, and nothing that they've done in the non-triple rune Death Knights has really gone that way, right? Like the spell that I can't remember the name of because it's really long from Festival of Legends, like that's not a reason to play Rainbow, right? Like you're not playing Rainbow for that card because it's a 10-mana spell. I mean, no, let me rephrase that. People were playing Rainbow for that card, but it wasn't very good because it was a 10-mana spell that sometimes did stuff and sometimes didn't, right? So like you need a better payoff for going on a non-triple rune, triple vertical rune than we have right now, and they just haven't printed anything like that.
I mean, I think when it comes to CNE, the issue with that card on printing and kind of still now is there are not good corpse spenders in Rainbow. There just aren't. So you had to sort of warp your deck building to force ways of spending corpses to power it up. If they had just made it work the way I thought it did, where it spent all your corpses like Marrowgar, Rainbow would be a good deck, right? Like you would not have to warp to force ways of spending corpses. You could just play all the best 4-tempo cards and then have this big 10-mana finisher that would be your Marrowgar, would spend all your corpses that you hadn't been spending on anything else and do, you know, a ton of damage, make a big board.
Yeah.
And in some respects, you could call that a triple rune card in the sense that it's one of each, and so it's the build around. But the sort of mini archetypes of hand buff, of plagues, don't have anything that is as powerful.
Yeah. Like
Grave Strength, like Soul Stealer, Vampiric Blood, Frostworm's Fury. They don't have anything like that that's a build around. And so, I mean, Frostworm's Fury, it's not even that it's a build around, it's just that it's so good that it's worth doing triple frost for.
There's nothing like it, right? And the problem with that is that when they print cards, they're printing like mini expansions for each rune type now, right? Like there were no frost cards in the mini set, so Frost DK didn't get anything, right? So like if you were a Frost DK enjoyer, you were playing Frost DK, like you got nothing, right? So, and I know that they don't want that to be, I mean, I don't know, but I would assume that they don't want it to be like that. So I don't know if just removing the multi-rune requirement gives it that flexibility enough that maybe you try that, but I think you need a top end. You need a reason to want to go multi-rune that is equivalent in power or fun level as what the triple rune decks have. The vertical.
I mean, to me, it
triple rune
feels a
decks have.
little. It feels a little bit like a menagerie deck, where it's going to be, to have even say something that's triple rune. It's locking you into the runes, but with a larger pool of total cards that you have to figure out how to fit together. And menagerie decks definitely tend to be harder to refine for that reason. But I've always really enjoyed them when there's been a good reason to play it. But often, most of the time, minion types synergize with having that minion type. That's just kind of naturally how they usually work. And so it can be difficult to get people to mix them, but it's fun when they do that. And Death Knight, was clearly intended to have some of that mixing, to not always just be separate. So, but I mean, maybe you just end up with a lot more single or double rune cards, and then if you don't have all the power concentrated in triple rune cards, especially triple of the same rune cards, then that might open up a little more experimentation. We'll have to see. There's also some inertia that people have in terms of how they build things. Apparently, there is a new Mech Frost DK.
Okay.
That was in the Nisha Syndicate report today. He wasn't calling it a meta breaker or anything like that, but he said this has appeared. So if you are a Frost DK enjoyer, this exists. And apparently aiming to counter druids with a mech early game. Quote, running mistake appears to be a mistake, though. So
I mean, the whole deck sounds like a
that,
mistake, but, who am I to say? So
if you're interested in that, you can take a look and make your own mind up about whether mistake is a mistake or not. So, all right. We also had a couple of changes to Paladin cards. So Tears was the 5-mana holy spell that was a Forge card. Resurrect 3 different minions. It used to say 3 different Paladin minions. Now it just says 3 different minions from your class. Set their stats to 2/2, Forge, Resurrect another. The dev comment makes clear this is just so that if you generate this in another class, say you're playing that 2/3 that gives you a holy spell.
Yeah, Watcher
of
the Sun.
Tears. Yeah, Watcher of the Sun. It used to be you'd get that and go, well, that's useless, and clogging up my hand for the rest of this game. Now, it is not useless when generated in other classes. Otherwise, for a Paladin, it functions exactly the same. And then Tyrian Forging went from a 6/6 to an 8/8. So I didn't see this one coming. But 8-mana 8/8 is a lot better than an 8-mana 6/6 for sure. Yeah. So that is definitely a more powerful option. I don't know what we're playing this in. There is
Twist.
Yeah, that would be my answer too.
Twist.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, this maybe is more of a twist change than a standard change, actually. That makes much more sense.
Yeah. That's a brick wall in Twist.
Yeah. There is a new, there's been experimentation in Earthen, Paladin, and Standard, where people are running it with a more sort of aggressive shell, and then this is your top end in the aggressive shell.
Yeah.
Rather than relying on it by itself to generate your pressure. But I don't think Tyrian goes in that deck.
You do get it off of Ignis sometimes, right? Because you have the weapon that'll summon an 8-drop. So like when you get it off of an Ignis 8-drop, it's still kind of a low roll because you're replacing your Ignis weapon when it dies, but it's it may not die right away, and then it's at least a bigger minion in the meantime.
So I would probably experiment somewhat with Tyrian in even standard Paladin because of Tears and the ability to get the weapon back in that way.
That's true.
except that reverberations exist.
Oh,
And so it's not worth it.
oh well, that was a fun minute.
And so does Yogg with mind control, which is also why in the Vicious Syndicate report today, Zacho actually recommended cutting Amon'Thul from Undead Priest because it's just going to get stolen.
Yep.
That's sad.
Undead Priest will be happy if there's less warriors, though. So if you like that deck and you're seeing less warriors, perhaps give it a try. And Varia is good in that deck. So, but yeah, we finally have one more card change that seems probably aimed at Twist, but does affect Standard, which is Lord Jaraxxus is now 8 mana instead of 9 mana.
This has been requested for years, for so long. People have discussed, what if you could hero power in the same turn as Lord Jaraxxus? You played Emperor Thaurissan or had other ways of getting a discount so that you could Jaraxxus and hero power in the same turn.
You could have done that now with Audio Amplifier, if you really cared, if you really loved Jaraxxus with all of your heart, you could make that happen. But, this also helps.
Mad at Arms, this one is for you.
Putting the J back in J-Lock. And it doesn't mess up. Well, it's no longer a minion. You can't draw it off of your Movement of Pride, although your Movement of Pride wouldn't prioritize it anyway. So,
yeah.
But Yogg can't steal it.
Yogg cannot steal it. And killing a demon will not kill your face.
It's the only hero card in Standard, right? I think so.
So. Yeah. All right. So that is all of our Standard balance changes. I don't know if there's any other Standard decks that we wanted to mention. Some things I had down here was a note that Moonbeam Druid is looking better, but still weak into aggression. They've got Yogg and they've got Prison Breaker, so that's 3 more things to deal with a board than they had before.
Yeah.
But
if there's more aggressive
still...
decks because of these changes, right? Like if Shadow Priests, like Undead Priest or like Imp Lock are now viable because of the warrior nerfs, right? Then that's going to make it a much harder, if anything like remotely aggressive pops up in the meta, like Moonbeam Druid is going to be sad. Because Moonbeam Druid does not have a lot of defensive tools without giving up its OTK. So
I think Enrage Warrior is really the answer here, because it is not just an aggressive deck. It is an aggressive deck that makes huge things fast.
Yeah.
And so as long as you have the weapon and ways of damaging your stuff, I have found that you snowball a little harder than most of those kinds of things can keep up with.
Yeah, that is the real sleeper, everyone. And maybe at some point we will see if we can do a deck explanations on this deck. But it is a very good deck. And yeah, all right. So shall we move on to? I will go much more quickly through these wild changes. So they say in the dev comment, for the wild focus changes, Caverns of Time is our first ever direct to wild expansion. We don't plan to make regular wild updates of this scale, but some cards from Caverns ended up needing some adjustments, and that presented us with a special opportunity to make adjustments more generally. Wild is a mode that's inherently full of powerful interactions, but we still want the mode to feel like you're playing Hearthstone. That's why these adjustments focus on the biggest play experience outliers in the mode, decks that are frustrating now and that if we didn't step in would likely remain frustrating for a long time. There are some strong wild decks that we didn't touch in these changes because, though they're powerful, they still generally fit in the Hearthstone mold. We've found that wild players often have different goals for the mode, so we expect that some players will wish we hit more or different things. But we hope that these adjustments will make the mode more fun for more players overall. Finally, for the twist focus changes, we've seen that the Wonders format was faster than we wanted, not leaving much room for some of the cards that are evocative of this Wonders era. The adjustments in this patch are targeted at weakening the format's clearest power outliers and at the same time buffing some late game payoffs and control tools. We hope that these changes, plus next month's twist modifier, will allow some room for slower strategies to exist in the format. So as a reminder, the twist modifier for October is that you can build with any number of cards from 30 to 40 and have the same health total as your card decks, or as your deck size.
31 card special. Let's go.
That's what I'm doing. I can't decide on my 30th card.
Yeah.
We're doing 31. And any time where I win with 1 health, if that ever happens, I will feel so justified.
Indecision won the day.
Yeah. Listening to that, it should still feel like Hearthstone. I'm like, yeah. So Chamber of Viscidus, where Disco Lock is just like, I don't pay for cards. I puke them into play by discarding them. And then Tony for Wild getting banned because it's just draw your deck and then, okay, here, have this pile of nothing now.
You don't have a deck anymore. This is no longer Hearthstone.
Back in my
So
day, you had to
speaking-
use King Togwaggle to do things like that.
I know. Maybe they will again. Someone will, I'm sure.
Someone will, for sure, for the content, if nothing else. So, speaking of, Chamber of Viscidus went from 2 mana 3 durability to 3 mana 2 durability. If you have not been playing Twist or Wild, that was the new location. Look at 3 cards in your hand and choose 1 to discard, draw 2 cards. It was insane.
Good,
was
get out.
Now-
Like it's
Play a 3/3, draw 2 cards.
the fact that you got to do
Deal
it
6
3
damage.
times. That you got to do it
6
3
damage randomly
times
spread
is
across
just
the opponent's board, draw 2 cards. Yeah.
And then you just by
Yeah.
the time that you'd used up the first one, you draw the second one, or you just play
Mhm.
both on the board at the same time. Who cares, right? So, yeah, this will slow it down. Like that's 2 less draws, that's 2 less discards, or 1 less discard per location. That'll slow it down significantly. Combined with the other changes to Warlock, because there are many. This will have a significant impact. But this was the worst offender, and it wasn't close.
Yeah. So to go through, there are 2 more Disco Lock cards here. So Dark Bargain, the destroy 2 random enemy minions, discard 2 random cards, went from 3 mana to 4 mana. And Tiny Knight of Evil, which I always hear in that voice, that the card
That high,
has,
that really high pitched squeal.
the really
Yeah.
high pitched Tiny Knight of Evil. That card. It used to be whenever you discard a card, gain +2/+2. Now it is whenever you discard a card, gain +2/+1. So you have a prayer of clearing it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm still going to go back to the Matt London tweet where he says, I don't think Dark Bargain would see play even at 3 mana. Well, we proved that wrong. He's right about a lot of things. He was not right about that. So,
To be fair, if it wasn't for the rest of the shell, we might not play it. But when you have Chamber of Viscidus, then Dark Bargain's looking pretty good.
I mean,
once-
3 mana, blow up 2 minions and discard 2 cards, which is something that you want to do.
Something you want to do
pretty
anyway,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the tempo there was always nuts, right? Like, and Tiny Knight of Evil alongside it, right? So you were buffing this thing +4/+4 alongside blowing up 2 minions. It was a lot. And also something that they have not messed with here is Silverware Golem was a 3/3 that they buffed to 3/4 in Caverns of Time, and like that is also really obnoxious in
Yeah, so no, you'd have this turn 2 Tiny Knight of Evil if you don't clear it turn 3. Now it is a 7/6, and you have a Silverware Golem, and you knocked out the opponent's board if they had something, and yeah, good luck. Good luck with the game now.
Yeah. Now it's going to be a 7/4, and you would need the coin to make that happen.
So in both Twist and Wild, They also addressed Warrior. So Blast from the Past, the new Caverns of Time that got you 2 spare parts, shuffle 2 1/1 boombots, or summon 2 1/1 boombots, shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck. That went from 3 mana to 4 mana.
Yep.
An Ivory Rook, also a new card, went from 4 attack 4 health to 4 attack 3 health. That was the one that was Battlecry, discover a taunt minion, gain armor equal to its cost. Again, a really good ability, especially in Twist, where that extra generation is really, really helpful. And so it doesn't also need to have as many stats attached to it.
Yeah, and having Blast from the Past competing with Ivory Rook in the curve is also a big deal. Because, like, Blast from the Past was really one of your only plays on 3, other than, like, playing an Acolyte of Pain in that deck.
Yep.
So having that competing with Ivory Rook and some other 4-cost cards in the deck is that'll make the curve a little bit more awkward, which will bring the power level down too, in addition to just slowing that down a little bit.
And that was definitely in the, in Twist, we definitely had just a few classes that were dominating. And another one of those was Rogue. So Jade Telegram, the new Caverns of Time card, went from 3 mana to 4 mana. That was the one that is look at 3 cards in your opponent's hand and shuffle one of them into their deck, summon a Jade Golem. I know a lot of people had suggested maybe putting combo in front of one of those sentences.
Yeah. Or deleting the card altogether. That would be great.
What if we took Secret Rogue and put it in Jade for just maximum salty archetypes together?
Yeah.
Except you don't have to have anything to make them get rid of a card.
Yeah. But and this card in particular is pretty brutal early, just because that's like there's not as much draw in Twist as there is like in Standard. So if you're getting this on 3 or you're prepping it out, like getting rid of one of your opponent's draw cards can actually be devastating that early. So slowing that down and giving your opponent a chance to get like an Acolyte of Pain or something down is actually a big deal.
That is a great point. It's a different format, and so it makes even more difference than it does in Standard. Also addressed the Absolutely Nuts card, the Scarab Lord, which summoned the Scarab Gong, which was, it used to be a 0/2 mana after, or 0/2 after this takes damage, fill your opponent's board with 1/1 scarabs. So you summon the Scarab Gong for your opponent, you hit it with your dagger, get a full board of 1/1s, and then next turn get another full board of 1/1s, or whenever they clear your board. Now you only get it once.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't read the first couple times I played this, I didn't read the card carefully enough, and I thought it was just when you kill it, get the full board of 1/1s, and it was still fine. And now that is what the card is.
Yeah. Or I tried to play it with Wild Pyromancer, thinking that the second proc was going to kill all the 1/1s and the thing, and it still left the 1/1s behind because it actually triggers. It doesn't need to live through the damage in order to summon the 1/1s, like with most After Effects.
Right. Yeah. So you would end up, okay, you clear what's currently there, and then they summon a new board of 1/1s, and then, yeah, that was just miserable. So they just solved it entirely by saying, okay, they only get to do that once. Thank goodness.
Already, again, especially in Twist, already a powerful effect. Lastly, for Rogue, Blade of Cthulhu is now 7 mana instead of 6 mana. That was the Battlecry, destroy a minion, add its attack and health to your Cthulhu wherever it is. So that just slows down the Cthulhu Jade Rogue a little bit.
I think in particular the fact that you cannot now go Blade into Twin Emperor into Cthulhu is nice. Like a lot of times they wouldn't even necessarily have a ton of Cthulhu cards. They were just running Blade because if you hit something pretty big, that would be enough. And having that curve potentially of Blade into Twin Emperor into Cthulhu, because Twin Emperor is a big
Those are 6
deal
7s
right now, right? Like now that it's 2 6 7s instead of 2 4 6, it's like,
Yeah.
It's got to be dealt with.
Yeah, and also it's a survivability thing, right? Because like Blade of Cthulhu is like their only removal for the most part. I mean, they have like obviously they have like, you know, Jade Shuriken and stuff like that. They have small removals, but like that's their only answer for like a really big taunt or whatever. So that being delayed by a turn also affects their survivability, which will help as well. Though I mean, a lot of and like it's worth saying that like the Jade decks had kind of been moving away from Cthulhu, I believe. At least at the beginning of the month. I don't know if they swung back, but they'd already been moving away from that. But this kind of just will just like make them choose between Cthulhu or Jade, right? I think that's kind of what it seems like. I think having both in the same deck is probably, maybe it won't, but it will probably be a little bit harder to try to do both in the same deck now.
At least more awkward. And yeah, because Blade could be your Cthulhu package almost by itself. So, or possibly literally by itself. And so now that doesn't work as well, or at least is slower and more awkward. I'm going to try to blaze through some of these other changes here. So we have one Hunter change, Trial of the Jormungars. Went from 5 mana to 6 mana. That was summon copies of 2 beasts in your deck that cost 3 or less. So I actually am not aware of what this was doing.
Oh, it's Asimon Dreadscale, so it was a board clear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so now it makes it more likely that you're going to draw patches, right? That's one more that's one more opportunity for you to draw patches before you can play this.
Yeah, the Hunter deck was so weird because it's Face Hunter, but you had 3 patches in the sense that you had actual patches, and then you had the Dreadscale and Acid Maw, and if you drew either one of them, then your Trial of the Jormungandr was turned off because those were your only beasts, or it would, you know, maybe it would summon one of them, and sometimes that would be worth it. But
they're only good together. Like they're both like pretty mid by themselves. They're really only good when you play them at the same time.
Yeah, and so playing Trial of the Jormungandr was get copies of them. They come in at the same time to a one-sided board clear. I think that's what's really big deal. And
big, yeah.
2 4/2s that must be cleared because it's Face Hunter. So it was really solid. And there were games where I like would do that 2 turns in a row, and they're just like, what am I supposed to do? You get your board cleared like that 2 turns in a row. But yeah, it's really rough when you draw one of them. So
that makes that a lot less consistent.
Yeah.
Then that sounds like a bit of the Toxfin.
Flurgle.
Oh, Flurgle. We're getting there too. Yep.
So we had a few shaman changes. These looking more at wild. So Spirit of the Frog went from 3 mana to 5 mana.
The old Sorcerer's Apprentice hit.
That was the one that whenever you cast a spell, draw a spell from your deck that costs 1 more. That a couple of weeks ago was an incredible wild heroic brawl story from you, Edel. Firemancer Flurgle is the Murloc. After you play a Murloc, deal 1 damage to all enemies. That went from 2 mana to 4 mana. That was used in a lot of decks with Toxfin because it was a one-sided board clear. Toxfin gives it poisonous. And then Scargill is it used to be a 4 mana 4/4 Murloc. Your Murlocs cost 1. Now it is a 5 mana 4/4 Murloc. Your Murlocs cost 1.
Was actual Murloc Shaman a problem in Wild, or what was this doing?
This is Shudderwalk Shaman.
Oh, okay.
So Shudderwalk Shaman just runs a massive Murloc package because you run the one that's draw 3 Murlocs, right? And that's great because then it's a draw thing that's Battlecry based, but when Shudderwalk is replaying it, then you're not, milling yourself. And then you've got Mutinous as well, which is a great disruption tool. Clownfish, of course. Like all of these mana changes, I feel like make a lot more sense when you remember that Clownfish exists and can make these things cost 2 less. And, you know, if the battle cry gets repeated somehow. So I don't know if they run something like Bolner in Wild. I would think so. But yeah, so you just get crazy turns with Clownfish reductions. And then when you've got Scargill, making them all cost 1. And so that you can do things like play Mutinous and, you know, multiple Mutinous battle cries. It's because, of course, there's Macaw as well still. So.
Yeah. I forgot that Shudderwock Shaman in Wild is basically Battlecry Murloc Shaman now. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Or Priest, they hit Shadow Essence, which was the shadow spell, summon a 5/5 copy of a random minion in your deck that has been a mainstay for a long time. It went from 6 mana to 7 mana. Which again is,
I don't think anybody's really sad about this. Nobody's sad about this, are they? Like, nobody likes... I'm the biggest Priest defender you will find, and I can send Big Priest straight to the bin. Right? Like, nobody is sad about this. I'm sure there are a couple of Big Priest enjoyers. But for the most part, I think it's surprising that it took them this long to do it. But especially because Shadow Essence is one of the big enablers to get it going. And now that it's... Big Priest is just like... what's his face? Neptulon, right? And just infinite Neptulons, like getting that to come out. And you already have things like Illuminate to oh, why am I blanking on the card? I'm sad. A Palm Reading, like, to discount it and make it cheaper. Like, I don't think it's a problem to make that 7. That's fine. Like, yeah,
all this is in the context of there's more cost reduction now. So, you know, some of these things that were slower, they're happening faster because of various mana reduction effects, whether it was, you know, Clownfish for the Murlocs or Palm Reading, Illuminate for Big Priest. I do wonder if this will make some people go like, what if we do Barnes again? But
someone at least will be thinking that.
Yeah.
Whether that works, hopefully not. It is wild, though. All right. We also have in Mage, Cabal Lackey. Old, the next secret you play this turn costs 0. Now the next secret you play this turn costs 1.
That's massive.
Yeah. No
really
more counterspelling quests.
And we're fighting the good fight against quests by being even more the anti-hero, by being a secret mage.
But slowing down secret mage is secret mage is super annoying to have to play against in Wild, and just slowing that down and not letting them get their first secret down on 1 is fine. And it's, you know, so then they have to wait till turn 2 to play that with a secret. I'm also okay with that. Like, you know, secret mage is always very powerful. I don't know if even the people who play it enjoy it, but they play it because it's strong. So, you know, I think that's a good thing for everybody.
Some people just really like preventing their opponents from playing the game.
It is hilarious when you have a couple secrets down and then you play the 3/5 who is still in standard.
Orion.
I believe. Orion. It's just like, I don't even do anything. They just keep running into the same brick wall.
Stop hitting yourself.
Secret,
Stop hitting yourself.
Gets countered. Play a minion. Gets countered. It's just, I mean, I don't think it's quite like that in Wild because there's so many more secrets for Orion to play, but it still is this thing of like, anything I do, I'm giving it +2/+2, and they have another secret that I have to play around.
And you kind of can't play around secrets that are random in Wild because there are so many. You know, you can a little bit, but not to the same degree that you can in Standard at all. So, because there's almost anything you do could proc some mage secret. So, lastly, there are 2 cards banned in Wild, and those are Mech Warper and Tony. As in Tony, King of Piracy, not Antonidas.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you cannot get rid of your opponent's deck, and your mechs cannot cost 1 less.
Yeah.
At least not that way.
Yeah. And Mech Warper was doing crimes in Wild. Like I mean I climbed up to legend from 5x in 1 month with Mech Paladin because of Mech Warper. It's the amount of cost reduction that you can do, and Mech Warper just enabled all of it. And it was stupid how powerful that was with everything that's going on with Frequency Oscillator, and then all of the and then you have like Skyclaw to get more mechs, and the Security Automaton and everything else. Like it just snowballs so quickly, and that was before all the mech stuff that came in with Titans, right? Like I was doing this in the Festival of Legends meta. This was before the spell that says your mechs cost 1 less. Like you just don't need that many different cost reduction effects in the same deck.
Yeah, Paladin will be one of the few that still has access to 2 sources of mech cost reduction. Galvanizer is still around, but that was just a battle cry of, reduce what's in your hand. So you want to do radar detector and then Galvanizer or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, having, particularly with all the like magnetic stuff, and from Sparkbot.
Yeah.
Having a minion
and the
that
dragon
just,
that gets Wind Fury too, right?
Yeah.
When you the dragon with the
that just constantly reduces is a bit of scary. And they're mech decks for so many classes potentially, right? I don't think people did Hunter as much, but definitely like it was just this thing of you would run Mech Warper and Galvanizer and then a bunch of cheap mechs and do whatever is your class's variation of like stuff with mechs.
Yeah. And as far as Tony's concerned, like that was the use case for Gadgetzan Auctioneer in Wild. So the fact that it's going to 7 is will help for future crimes, but the current crimes are Tony, and Tony has been sent to jail. So he's not going to be doing any more piracy in Wild for a while. At least until rotation, when they inevitably rework him somehow and make him, well, they have to, right? Because otherwise it's just a dead card. That's what they did with the Warlock quest.
Yeah.
And Tony was always, from when he was released, clearly a card that if this is ever really good, something has gone wrong.
Yeah. I mean, he does crimes. It's in his name, right? Like that's what he's there for. But some crimes are more egregious than others.
There are good pirates.
Really?
Yeah, just watch One Piece. It's great. Luffy's great.
Yeah. Anime's not real at all.
There's a live action now.
Okay, I'm gonna blast through these buffs to twist cards. So, Cenarian Hold, your next choose 1 card this turn has both effects combined. Druid Location, it went from 2 mana to 1 mana. Dragonfire Potion, the priest spell, deal 5 damage to all minions except dragons. That went from 6 mana to 5 mana. Please let there be a dragon priest in Twist. It will get me back into Twist. Baron's Dragon Knight was one of the new Caverns of Time Paladin cards. It now has Taunt. It was always Battlecry. If this has 5 or more attacks, summon a copy of this. It starts with 3 attack. So now you get 1 or hopefully 2 taunts, as opposed to just 2 big dumb dragons on the board. In Shaman, Elemental Destruction was the nature spell, do 4 to 5 damage to all minions. That went from Overload 5 to Overload 2. And it costs 3 mana up front.
I wish we could have taken the 4 to 5 off of that, just made it 5. Like,
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's so like 5 damage to the board for 5 mana is like at the same level as like Dragonfire Potion, right? Like we can just do that without having like the old Lightning Storm effect, but whatever. It's better at Overload too. Yeah.
It has to have the hyphen.
But the Overload 5 was like even with all the ways to unlock your crystals, it was way too much. It's been outclassed several times by now. It's fair to bring it down to 2.
And finally, Alakir, the Winds of Time, was the new Caverns of Time hero card for Shaman. That went from having 5 armor to 8 armor. That, to remind everyone, is a 7-mana card. Battlecry, draw a charge, Divine Shield, Taunt, and Wind Fury minion. And I am forgetting what its hero power
It
does
gives
off the
you
top
it
of
gives
my
your
head.
hero Divine Shield and Wind Fury
And 2 attack.
and 2 attack.
So, I mean, that's definitely a really cool card. I can see them really wanting to have that be played. Because it's just a very flavorful, interesting card. All right, so that is the end of Wild and Twist. We're not going to go through everything for Battlegrounds, but there was some Battlegrounds changes. There is a update for the anomaly system. Each week's new anomalies will now have a slightly smaller appearance bonus in higher rated lobbies. They will still have an appearance bonus for the first week they are added compared to all the other anomalies, but not as large of one. Lower rated lobbies will still have the same offering bonus as before. So if you're me, this makes no difference.
If you're a really good BGA's player, Jay Carrick, take note. Like
they updated some of the anomalies.
I don't think we need to.
I don't think we need to read through all of these. If you play Battlegrounds, you definitely are going to want to read through that. They updated some minions. They removed Keyboard Igniter and Sparkling from the minion pool and returned Felemental. And did some changes to a few other minions, so definitely check that out.
Yeah, I think the only one that's worth calling out really quickly is piloted Whirlotron, which is which used to say copy of different friendly minions death rattles, and now it says copy all other minions death rattles except for its own. So that's kind of a big deal.
It's funny how many of these are buddy updates, and buddies aren't even in. It's just that sometimes they're in because of an anomaly, right? And then ETC.
Yeah.
And finally, there were some updates in duels that were addressing, I asked some of our Discord regulars who are duels enjoyers, including Lulu, about these changes. And in general, these seem like they are addressing real power outliers that were in the format. For example, Caverns of Time. The Caverns Below has been banned from both initial deck building and all card pools because there is a new rogue hero power which gave you random 1 cost minions. We wanted to keep that, but obviously that doesn't work very well with the Caverns Below. So now you can't do that. There was a lot of scams with Unlocked Potential, which is the passive that sets your minions' attack and health equal to each other. That had existed in there for a long time without incident, but then a couple of really egregious decks emerged with that. Unfortunately, however, there is a new sort of scam deck that came in a little bit after they were able to put these in, and so they weren't able to address it, where you're able to... let me make sure that I say this correctly. So there's 2 new neutral mechs that each say, one from Caverns of Time and one from Titans, that will draw you a mech and discount it by 2. So they can draw each other and discount by 2. And then you use that. Hold on, I want to make sure that I say this correctly, and I don't have the...
the fact that you need to look up how exactly to do this probably says it's not going to be that outside of high level duels.
It can go into anything. So if you get the Elixir of Vigor passive after you play a minion, shuffle 2 copies of it into your deck. They cost 2. you just end up with infinite free mechs, basically. And it can go into multiple different classes. The best version is Drexthar Warlock running a disco package and the tutor and neutral minion hero power.
Oh god. Okay.
But if you're at a higher MMR, people are making it work in all kinds of places. So,
yeah, I'm sure.
But they are working on duels and addressing things in duels. And certainly if you're playing more casually in duels, I would imagine this is less likely to be everywhere. But that is one thing to be aware of. And they did address some of the more longstanding play experience outliers in duels. All right, and bug fixes. There was a couple bug fixes in duels. In the events, they clarified the text on an event daily quest requiring that you experience an anomaly. It has to be completed in traditional Hearthstone, not Battlegrounds. I believe they also fixed the one where there was one of the event quests was just not
I think that was the
completing.
same one, right? That was
That's
it
the
was
same
also
one,
the
yeah.
experience anomaly one. Yeah.
That has all
know-
been fixed.
You know, it has not been dealt with. The try to claim a hero, except you've already claimed them all, and so I just have this red exclamation point.
Oh no,
forever.
for the 200 levels on the rewards track.
Yeah,
How have they not made a Death Knight portrait for that yet?
I don't know. But I can't claim what doesn't
Oh
exist.
no.
And it just does not go away.
I guess
Oh my
you just have to
gosh.
burn it all down.
When I get
guess
there,
that's the
I'm
only
gonna
answer.
be so frustrated.
Oh.
Yes, hopefully my having taken a break means that they fix this problem before I get there. There was also an issue where some people, if you logged in on mobile, you were seeing the wrong pop-up for what cards had changed. If you just restart the client, that should fix that issue.
It happened
but
to me.
probably by the time.
Yeah, it happened to me. I logged in and nothing was there. It popped up the wrong cards and none of the nerfs were there. I logged out, logged back in. It was fixed. I think it was probably because it was like close to when the server update happened. Probably. So, and just giving it some time fixed it. You should be fine. If you see anything weird, just log out, log back in. It'll fix itself. Well, not anything, but anything with the nerfs.
Generally a good first step. Take it from
Yes.
our tech expert.
Hello, IT. If you
First
tried turning
thing.
it off and on again.
That's what I do too. People say, "Oh, you teach computer science. You must be really good at fixing things." I'm like, "Well, I'm good at turning them off, turning them back on again, and asking Google." So,
Honestly, sometimes that's like better than knowing actual stuff, because you always do those things first, and they work a decent amount of the time.
That and make sure it's plugged in. Those are the two things you need to check for.
definitely,
That's the patch. A whole lot of stuff. So no matter what format you've been enjoying playing, definitely give it a shot. It was data only patch, so if you haven't checked in the game yet, it would have done right away. You won't even need to update. They're just there. So enjoy. I know I'm going to be delving into Twist a little bit to see how things have hopefully changed. Maybe I can actually get N'Zoth Paladin to work. But
Any Finn Paladin with Tyrion. Let's go.
yeah, maybe. We have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at coinconcede.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats at our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. And write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coinconcede. If you'd like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Number Theory, Kresh, Beef Squatch, David P., Walu, Jeremy T., Bottlecaps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Forgiven One, Enraged Chicken, and Grizzly Bear. And Coin and Seed to Breadsticks for the 3 gifted subs during the show. Coin and Seeds from either of you?
Well, I will start with Coin Concede to both Clark, Hellscream, and Tic Tac, who both got partner on Twitch this week. And I know they've both been working pretty hard at that. So Clark especially has been, I think that's like his 5th time that he's applied, if I remember correctly. So, glad to see all that good work paying off, and they're both good streamers who, definitely deserve the recognition. So, coin concede to both of them.
I'd like to coin concede, well, first to those who were affected by the layoffs. I really hope they're able to find a good position soon, and also hope that, Hearthstone is able to continue to put enough investment into the tools, the kind of thing that you don't see a problem immediately, but does need long-term investment. And it's just, some of these people had been there a long time and were laid off without notice, and that's just not a good experience. So best wishes to them. I'd also like to coin concede to Grumpy Monk, one of our producers, who made a note in the Discord that he is going to be at least taking a bit of a Hearthstone break, because it's not the amount of time that he needs to put in to keep at the level that he wants to be at, that he finds fun to be at, is not quite where he's at right now. I just wanted to say you are always welcome in Discord, and thank you for being my partner in crime and rising up to those ranks, and then Grumpy was able to keep those ranks much more effectively than I was, really master a deck and then just play it at the highest level. So I'm sure that whatever games he goes on to play or hobbies that he has, he will excel at them. And also, I mentioned this before, but coin concede to you, Jagu, for your coin concede to me on ladder. I appreciate it.
I'm going to coin concede to, I think, Spine. There's numbers in there, but who I ran into on ladder, and I had to go quickly after our match, but then they jumped in the chat to be like, "Hey, was that you? I just played." Yeah, I high rolled a little bit. I was in a situation where my Jailer Immune board got gigafinned, and I was like, "Well, I've got this Tendril. Let's see what happens." And it played
Praise Yogg.
Abyssal Wave, and I got all my stuff back, and that was it. So,
oh, that makes me so angry yet happy for you at the same time. Well, on that note, keep calm and find someplace else to get the best deals. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Stopping recording. Well, I mean, I guess we were right that was all we needed for explanations. Good Lord.
Going through, I will say, it is hard to go through those notes smoothly and time efficiently. And
well, there was so much that,
because there's a lot to do. But I think
it'll. I feel like I can make it better when I have an older child or a not newborn and can engage more in the figuring out the notes process. But yeah, I mean, this level of balance is kind of the equivalent of, hey, we just revealed all the cards in a mini set.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
So
it was going to take us this long. Yeah.
I probably should have mentioned that's going to be the whole show. I mean, often with Hat, that's what we would do. Patch like this, it's just
Hat talks faster than we do.
That's true. Yeah. And so we just we wouldn't even do timestamps for explanations or tournaments or anything because it was just all news. But
well.
Well,
it looks like Language Hacker's streaming, so we should go raid him. I think that is a Language Hacker.
And I gotta go.
Yep. So I'm gonna raid him, and bye, chat. Thank you for coming. We will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.